All right, we're on. Hey, everybody. Hey, Jackie. Hey, Mike.
Hello.
Hello, hello. I hope everybody is having a good day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are located. Thank you so much for joining us for our once again monthly Impact Series. I'm Jackie Kenny, Director of Product Marketing here at Observe.ai. We've got my lovely co-host Sneha, and joining us today as our guest is Michael Pace, the president of Northeast Contact Center Forum and the CCW Contact Center Leader of the Year in 2022. Mike, do you want to give just a little bit of an intro of your background in the contact center space and the types of organizations you've worked with over your tenure?
Sure. Great to see you guys again, and happy to be here. I started off on the phones. I got lucky, and I was with Tiffany and Company, my very first job. I could probably still tell you what's on page 26 of the catalog. I know way too much about silverware and jewelry than I'd ever really want to know about ever again, but I do. Um, I really spent 10 really incredible years with Capital One in the financial services. Did a bunch of work with Constant Contact and sort of the SaaS space. Went off on my own, started my own consultancy. Built a lot of luxury retail. So if you've shopped at David Yurman or Tory Burch or Blue Nile, you felt some of what I've done. And then for the last 7 years, really been in healthcare with Virgin Pulse and now Personify Health, and just concluded that tenure about a month back, and here I am today.
Wonderful. You've got experience across a lot of different industries. That's
Yeah.
great. I love the jewelry specifically.
I can tell you all kinds of things about hobo bags and jewelry and all kinds of jewelry made of meteorite, all kinds. Way too much extra in the head though.
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea about luxury retail or jewelry or any of this and all the
Oh
insights
yeah,
that we had.
oh
Wow.
yeah,
All the questions that we could have asked before,
I
yeah.
right,
know, right?
Neha?
Like,
We'll do a sub series on what what managers know about fashion and jewelry. Yeah, sure. Happy to have me on for that show too.
Wonderful. Okay, and Sneha, you want to do a quick intro for yourself as well?
yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Sneha. I lead the business value and analytics team here at Observe.ai. Jackie and I, we've been working closely over the past few months with the Impact series. So we're just really excited for today's conversation with Mike.
Wonderful. All right, and then some quick housekeeping and we'll get right into our topic. Sessions being recorded. Q&A is on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be monitoring it, so please submit any questions you have and we'll try to address them during this session. And the recording will be sent out post-webinar with any follow-up resources that are necessary. So with that, let's get into it. The title for today, From Frustration to Flow, a step-by-step guide to replacing IVRs with AI. That is a lofty title. I'm super excited, though this is so complex. I feel like we've got to peel back the layers. But when I think about myself as a consumer, as I've just seen the transformation in the industry, it's really interesting. Voice has always been the biggest channel, and brands have always wanted to bring it forward. But sometimes in like the most recent years, probably the last 2, 3 years, so sometimes it takes me a minute to find the phone number now. And so I think IVRs are getting tricky to manage, and it's seen maybe a little bit more as a deflection point, maybe. And so with AI agents kind of coming to the forefront, Mike, I'm interested in just how you're thinking about this. I don't know if you consulted for a brand where they kind of were hiding the number and now it's like, oh, let's put it front and center. Let's meet the consumer where they are. Just kind of walk me through how you're shifting even just your mindset on this.
Yeah, so let's start with kind of the global mindset, right? At this,
Mhm.
start. I think we're much more attuned or accustomed to speaking to get things done, whether it be in your Apple CarPlay or Siri or any kind of voice app on your phone, Alexa, whatever the case is, right? So, evolutionary wise, we're definitely moving toward that space where just having a conversation about things. For the last 15, 20 years, IVRs were great tools for segmenting, kind of directing people to certain spaces. It could answer some very, very direct, data specific questions, count balances, maybe some return information in the healthcare space, maybe some very, very simple sort of options and such. But as you said, it's try to get a hold of somebody. I think we've all been in that spot where pound star 0 pound something, get me to somebody
Representative.
type of thing.
Almost every day.
And at the same time, too, I think we're also at a spot too where we're pretty comfortable getting good answers from automation, right? So we're at this point today. I think a lot of most companies do have IVRs or some version of a interactive voice response unit as a part of their contact center tool set. And again, they probably do deflect a lot, or they do put people through a number of kind of different options and such. It's still some of it is voice based, say two, or you could press two, but it's still an IVR, right? Now we're moving into this space where if you treated every kind of contact center like your Alexa, like your Siri, that's where we're going. And the flexibility and scalability is really, really immense. I apologize too, every time I say Siri, my
That
iPad
just
is turning
happened
on.
with
Yes.
my iPhone too. I just
So I think that's just where we are today. I do think the next steps for things in the contact center really do open up. There's lots of different lots of different flexibilities and scalability options with this that hopefully can really simultaneously improve the customer experience and help people scale their businesses.
Yeah. 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 And when you think about your traditional IVR, beyond customer frustration, right? Because that one's one of the more obvious. What is one of the most single biggest operational costs of maintaining something traditional today?
Sure. So, if you're still on an on-prem system, there's a lot of maintenance that goes with that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times IVRs are bolted on top of it and such. But even in a CCaaS space, where things are in the cloud and you are using an IVR there, it's still, it's not, your contact center leadership probably can't alter it, change it, make alterations to it all that easy. If they can, they're probably relatively simple. If it is interacting with the database, again, it's also very, very simple requests and such. And it's really more about, they're fine, right? But now, I think we are accustomed to being able to do a lot more in today's world, with our voice to get to the right people, to answer the right questions. That really can, take the deflection value of an IVR and improve it, but then also improve the customer experience simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the sentence that stands out to me. They're fine. But you think about how you started the conversation, right? You've got Apple CarPlay. I mean, we're so connected that it's almost like if my phone's not around me, I'm like, where is it? I don't know. I feel like a piece of me is missing almost. And so when
Yeah,
you think about that from a brand perspective, it's almost like what you're offering is really your product. It's not just a service or a platform or anything anymore. Like your experience in your customer service organization is a product just as much as what you're actually selling.
no,
So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, in a lot of cases, we did a lot of talk about healthcare, prior to this. The service is the product a lot of the times, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times that can be the case even in retail, right? Like you know, I'll take a great brand like Chewy, right? Like it's a fantastic brand, but they sell dog food. It's a commodity. The service is really the product there. Um, and IVRs are just fine, right? So if you're fine with just fine, you can go that way. And we'll talk a lot more about, why, conversational voice, AI, piece can really, enhance that, improve it. And also, it doesn't get talked about a lot. It also can help you get to the right people, the right place at the right time, especially in a complex organization.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, a lot of people that are joining this today are probably thinking, where do I even begin? So I know you come to us with a lot of knowledge on IVR transformation, both in terms of experience, but also just how you're thinking about it because you've seen it in action. What's one non-traditional metric, right? So not hold times or CSAT, but like a different type of metrics that really you felt was the catalyst of convincing leadership that now is the time. We need to prioritize IVR transformation, even though it is a insanely huge lift over competing projects, and here's why. Like walk us through that conversation.
Yeah. So, we talked about the evolution first, right? So it's much more common. It's much, it's becoming expected. Um, but really, where the value is beyond an IVR, where it's a really, really kind of simple, very, very specific data point driven sort of answer type of thing. When you start getting to conversational AI, you're opening up a lot more flexibility, right? So to be able, and it does come down to be able to, what are the types of questions and answers that you're able to offer, and potentially, if you want to call it deflect or intercept, or just handle with the digital human, call it what you be. But it is, everybody is struggling doing more with less. And when you start talking about, metrics like cost per contact, or it's actually even better, cost per customer is actually probably a better metric here, whether it be cost per customer, or order to customer ratios, or order to contact ratios, and those kind of things. What you're looking to do there is expand that as much as possible. In the healthcare space, we were really looking at contacts to members. That was like the golden metric, right? Like, you know looking at how can you reduce that percentage of members touching a human contact, was the golden scale metric. And the more you could lower that, the more you can have people working on more difficult, or areas that need more empathy, or more personal touch, and without over expanding, blowing your gross margin, blowing your personal budgets. It's really all about that kind of core variable of cost per whatever, right? And trying to reduce that one. That, I mean, that is the essentially doing more with less, and be able to do it at the same time of either maintaining or improving your CSAT or NPS scores, what have you. I mean, that's really that's the super silver bullet that we're all looking for.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, my next question was kind of like, what's the most compelling future state vision? But I think you answered that. And so it sounds like almost like the first step in even just dipping your toe in the water here is just mapping out maybe what your customer journey is and talking about what it looks like and what it could look like. And if you move one thing over here and AI here, what does that then mean for some of your key metrics, whether it's CSAT, contact per customer, those sorts of things. So it's kind of helping everybody visualize those piece by piece. Is that a fair
Yeah,
assessment?
you hit on a bunch of really important points there. So I do want to
Yeah.
dive into that. we talked about the silver bullet a second ago, but the golden rule is to know your customer, right? Based on different industries, you can have different customers, different customer needs, how they want certain information. Retail, you might be able to do more, status info, status updates, and things like that on, where's my order or returns. Healthcare, you're probably going to want to get certain things to a person because they're going to be more difficult and more empathetic. You need the empathy there and such, right? So there's a wide range, and there's also the demographic, or don't always love the term persona, but the persona of your customer. Are they highly digital? Are they laggards? Do they need a phone? Are they still using a landline, right? Or is it all, cell phone based and what have you? So first, know your customer. But I do think in this space, with the conversational AI, you mentioned it first. It's not about jumping into the AI pool, head first. I don't think. There are times where it does make sense. You're a startup or you're a young company, you're rebuilding. If you're rebuilding, going from an on-prem system to a CCaaS system, this might be the time to do it now too, like a full, changeover. But for the most part, it's about taking some really specific use cases. I would start with what I would consider low risk, and if you could do low risk and high impact, that's the best, right? In the retail space, it might be status updates. In healthcare, we were talking about, it might be your provider or your doctors and things like that, where you're pretty much just providing very kind of cut dry, basic information, with always the option to be able to speak to a person, right? So that's always, as we do this, let's keep that in mind as much as possible. But it's about every contact center has lists and lists of call types or skills or what have you, right? As you go through those and you go through the dispositions or reasons for people calling, there's bound to be some that come up a lot, but are also probably relatively simple, right? It could be logging in. It could be, like I said, checking the status of a return, or where the status of my order is, or a very simple explanation of benefits, right? So start with those first, and you don't need a complete, this isn't, by doing that, hook it into your telephony system and just focus on that, sort of singular one, show the benefits of it, and then just start expanding. At some point, you will probably hit a critical mass where it makes sense of like, let's take a step back and look at our entire customer journey. And it's gonna sound crazy, but you can actually really, really simplify things by doing this. Take a relatively large company with either lots of products or lots of subsidiaries or what have you, right? If you had to build an IVR or how to use your IVR for this, you're either going to need a lot of 800 numbers to come in, and then you're going to need branches of branches of branches to get people either to the right person or try to get them to go through an automated type of system, right? You're going to have even more mazes to do that, right? You're going to be going through all these different, levels. Imagine just asking, how can I help you? Right? And letting them tell you, and leveraging, the answer, select the call type, or, and the call type might lead to an AI answer, or an AI answer with a human extension at the end of it, or it might just go to a person too, right? But it's going to be the right person, right? And you don't have to, put them through a maze of IVRs to get them there, especially when you got lots of companies with lots of products and lots of divisions and such. I think it's a little scary, but I think you could really, really simplify.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you touched on so many important points while
I'm
you
sorry.
no, it's all good. It's great, right? So it gives us so much more to talk about. Um, I think what was interesting was, I think you mentioned CSAT a few times, the entire experience. I mean, obviously for customer service, mapping out your entire member experience is going to be key. And member experience is nothing but, it's eventually going to translate into CSAT scores.
Mhm.
but also we've had so many issues and customers just getting frustrated with the idea of, navigating that maze of, press one, press pound, press star, etc. Right? So a lot of the times, like by the time you reach a human agent, you're already frustrated. You're coming in hot, which in a lot of ways I feel is unfair to the human agent. So I think it would be interesting to understand your take, maybe if you have examples of what you've seen in the space of due to the IVR not functioning properly, or think of it like an IVR tax, the human frustration, like how does that impact agent performance? Because I feel
Yeah.
like, a lot of our stakeholders, they already feel, especially the agents on the contact centers, they already feel that they're unfairly graded or, penalized
Oh,
for
sure.
a lot of wrong reasons. And so when you're taking, if I'm frustrated because of the IVR, I'm not really thinking about, oh, the human agent did everything in their power to make me feel good. Sometimes I'm just adding, oh, you as a brand did not help me, get to my resolution faster, so I'm going to give you a low score. So
Mm.
like how do you differentiate or make sure that the human agents don't necessarily get penalized for that frustration?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Yeah, I think you know, the example, I think we can all relate to is the IVR starts, it actually starts asking you questions, and you're inputting numbers or long strings of things, right? And you're going through this whole thing, and you get to an agent and they ask you all the same questions all over again, right? Now that's beyond after holds and IVR mazes and all these other kinds of things, right? So I agree that there's that tax. Being able to streamline that and kind of get people to where they need to get to faster, with a better integrated uh, process, right, is much more clear. I do think, and there's a ton of tools in the Observe AI product that can help you understand whether it comes out of the IVR or comes out of the conversational IVR, where you can immediately start understanding the sentiment and CSAT, and you know are they coming into that and then you're putting them in a giant dead air space, right? Because they're fumbling around for different things, right? All that, it's really really simple in the dashboards and such, and really kind of easy to find, easy to identify, which are just really small little points that sort of add up. And when you start talking about, why do we do this? I think that was kind of what you're getting at was, we're doing this to improve the customer experience, and we're doing this to kind of scale the business as much as possible, while keeping this keeping the experience as good as we can. So lowering the tax, I guess everyone likes lower taxes. I feel like I need to do this. Lowering the taxes, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, does that so and I'm going off script, right? So
Okay.
so far, like we've had agents and human agents being graded on, I mean, CSAT is just one of the metrics, right? So now
Yeah.
with AI agents coming in, what's your take on having a separate customer experience score for, the AI agent conversation versus the human agent? Do you think that's where the industry is moving?
I think it should, right? If you got to, I've seen containment rates on, depending on industry, but ranging from 15 to 40% and even more in different sectors. You kind of want to understand how their experience was, right? Um, and it might be, you're probably not going to get this experience blew me away all the time, because it's, I asked the question, I got an answer, and it was done. Some people are going to love that value and efficiency of their time, right? Some are just going to rate it as, it's a great table stake and good, you took care of things. But it's still going to be incredibly important to manage and monitor, right? So if you do put this in, you do have to understand, this, the CSAT of this is probably actually in certain ways almost more important than the CSAT of the human score, right? Because if you don't pay attention to it, it's just going to fly right by you, and you're never going to see it, right? With human scoring, you probably do have QA agents or things that will create exception reporting to shoot them out and stuff like that. But these type of things, you really want to be as on top of this as you are with the human agents, and it's pretty simple as long as you have those sort of the triggers post the call and sending those out.
I like that. I like that point a lot on, you know, the score for the AI agents being more, if not equally important as the human agents, because you already have a human in the loop. You have quality teams,
Right.
setting these conversations, but you need to do that even for AI agents so that you're able to provide that unparalleled customer experience. So I love that. Okay.
I think it makes sense, right? Because even though we're transforming the IVR, that role in itself is not going away. It's actually probably becoming even more critical because with AI, you're probably not touching it as often. So, governance, control, all of that stuff is important. And then on the flip side, the metrics of is it working in which the way I wanted it to? Is it driving the right customer outcome? I love that.
Yeah.
So there's another thing that you mentioned, Mike, as you were just hitting all of those phenomenal points, and it was there is going to come a point in time when you are going to have to say, should I be moving fully over and sunsetting my old IVR? Let's unpack that a little bit because I think that there's a
Sure.
lot there that the audience is going to be excited for.
Yeah.
One that we hear all the time in the industry is start small, right? So, in theory, that sounds great, but I think as a CX leader, there's so much pressure around, quickly pivoting from a successful project to a successful program that's
Mhm.
scalable. So that's quite a large question, but like, how do you think through, okay, let me start small, just to build some momentum and maybe some comfortability and some trust. But
Yeah.
then how do you move very quickly to, hey, we have transformed the experience? And then I'll save my next question for after because those are two big ones.
Yeah, so I do think it's about starting small, but I think one of the big things I learned as we started small was we still sent all of our calls through it, right? So all of our calls uh, created a learning environment for Observe AI's AI to learn, right? So, let's say, let's take a step back because I'm even getting ahead of myself here, right? So I do think, having a strong strategy and plan, for this is really appropriate, right? Um, I love the idea of starting small, but, and growing faster. So let's say, we do pick something relatively small. Hopefully it's something that's, low impact, low risk, high impact, right? Um, and we start putting either a portion of those contacts through or all of those contacts through, monitor it, understand it. But before we do all that, we still want to hook our phone system up to it to have, observe, kind of start learning about our calls, right? And learning, we probably before we turned something on, I think we were well over 100,000 calls when we did it last year, right? Before we turned even a single piece of AI on, which creates a great foundation to start building on. Then you take that sort of one thing, you're looking for, is it saving me calls? Is it saving me handle time? Is it saving me, something along, one of the key variables, that, are important. Is it opening up more uh, time for humans to work, after the call? Is it opening up just more, opportunities, more time to actually take calls and such, right? and then absorb that benefit, right? Understand like the benefit that you are getting, realizing, and by realizing it is either not hiring or allocating to other tasks that can create value. And as you're doing that, you'll see pretty quick, like it should be pretty obvious of what sort of the next sort of things you want to build upon, right? And you want to add another kind of call type to it, add another couple call types to it. We haven't even gotten into all the other really, really cool features of the Observe platform, right? Where, you're looking at, the QA and, agent assist and, all the other kind of things. I know we're going to get to them later on, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, but there's a ton of benefit just in there, that can, drive, a lot of your, core KPIs. But then, yes, at some point, your strategy should lead you to, we're at sort of the tipping point. We're seeing value being returned here. What if we put everything on here? Yes, and legitimately simplify it. And probably where you're probably worrying about, you're probably at that point, you're probably getting to the point of, if I keep sort of building down this AI track and I have my current IVR track, and sooner or later your entire environment is going to be harder and harder to manage, right? Which takes people and time and effort and could potentially lower CSAT and such. So sort of playing that out. I'm a big fan of AI advisory boards or governance boards within a company. Because there's more than just the contact center that's going to, that interacts with this, or interacts with AI, components within a company, and understanding kind of where everything fits along that journey, within your entire company is really, really important. But understanding your own specific strategy is really, really important. And we blocked it out by quarters, where first quarter was really about, for us, it was about getting quick hit value. And then it was, turning on the higher quality, type features like QA and agent assist, and eventually for us it was moving to the a whole conversational AI system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's something that you said a lot earlier in the conversation too that's quite interesting, right? So it's start small with a low risk, high impact, but the key there is know your customer, right? And
Yes.
so low risk, high impact, and what's the customer expectation? Even though it's low risk and high impact, does the customer require empathy? If so, remain with the human. If they don't require empathy and it's something a little bit more basic, okay, then let's move forward with that. So I think that there's that additional component that you talked about earlier of how to define that start small. I
Mm-hmm.
love the idea of as you're even working through building that out, pushing all of your calls into the system because the most important part about any AI is they need to be able to understand your business nuances. That's where it
Yes.
goes from generic and it's fine to, wow, this works for my business. So I love that you did that to speed up that once you had this in production, it was like, okay, it's operating exactly how I want it to operate with maybe some slight calibration here and there versus feeling like you actually needed to do a little bit of a pilot once you were actually ready.
Yeah, it's almost a pre-pilot that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had. It was great. So hooked
Optimize your
in,
time.
getting all the things hooked in, putting your calls through, having the system kind of learn, whether it be the jargon or just
Right.
what are people asking for. And then you can, while you're doing that, you can really start building out the process and understand, again, when I say low risk, these are things that, could be that people are already expecting an automated response from, right? We live
Mhm.
in a world where there is a lot of, where there
Yeah.
is an expectation for a lot of things to be automated, based on the question. And then there are times where, of course, if at any point in that entire time they're talking, they say, agent, or I need a customer service person, I need to speak to somebody, just get them there and get them to the right place, as soon as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And the second piece that's really interesting that you said is AI counsel. Because I think the second point is you've started small, you've built up your momentum, you did your pre-pilot, so by the time you were live, you were like, I'm ready to go. How do you then decide, okay, there's trust, we can start expanding? And who decides that? So maybe that is your AI counsel, and so let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. That was a big part of the way we did things at Personify and such was an AI council. I think it's a great best practice. Bringing in your product teams or your people teams or your engineering teams and your tech teams and such. Could be your marketing teams. It could be a lot of different areas, right? Um, First of all, it's great to understand what other departments are doing too, right? So if they're layering in, AI functions and such, it's good, for you to know about that as well. Um, but it's also great for them to know about what, you're planning on, right? Again, this is going to really, really affect the customer experience, hopefully in a really, really positive way. But the marketing people should know that. The product people should know that. And then helping that by we used to call it always kind of like road showing it, right? So sort of road showing our plans. The first benefit is just getting it out there, right, and sort of putting out your shingle. Then the second piece is find that people will want to help you once you start kind of this is what we're looking to do, and then people will also start telling you things that might be really interdependent that could change about how you're thinking about it, right? So I could throw out the greatest plans in the world, but if I find out that we're also doing, some major sort of monster upgrade in Q4, that might push out, some other plans and what have you. But having sort of that AI council gets everybody, in the entire organization aligned to, what you're doing from an AI standpoint. And it's not, AI is a tool to drive a result, right? So it's, how are you using all these tools to create the experience or whatever you're building there.
Yeah. Yeah, so it maybe not who's driving the decision, but it's a very collective decision. It's not like it needs to be consensus, but it's
Hmm.
definitely a room full of folks talking about it before anything's moving forward.
Yeah, I highly recommended best practice, I would say.
Yeah. I know you're going to tell me you can't answer this next one, but I'm going to ask it to see. I don't think that there is a silver bullet here, but is there a best practice or some sort of signal or trigger of it is time to sunset the IVR and move things over? I know it's
Yeah,
going to be very dependent, but is there
I think
anything
it's
to share?
yeah, I do think it's when the complexity to manage is too great or the value of not doing it is too great, right? So um if you have you know say you have a relatively complex IVR and you start picking off sort of use cases, right? And so if your IVR had 16 legs, right, and you've knocked off four of them, right, at some point, now you're managing the IVR and you're managing the AI, right? Um, it probably does start making sense to, if we look at, converting the whole thing. And again, converting the whole thing could really, really simplify things, right? Whereas, again, we were talking about an IVR with 16 legs and changing that to, hi, welcome to XYZ company. How can we help you today? Just let us know. Just tell us what you're looking to do. And, you're going to answer some things via straight AI answers, that may go to a person. You may set up things that prepare people for a call, like collect a lot of information and provide it directly into their CRMs or workflow and ticketing systems or what have you. Or you might go right to a person, right? So instead of having tons of legs with tons of individual database interactions and stuff like that, you might be able to really really streamline it. Like, how can I help you today? And you know I'll use an example, like everyone's used, like a bank, right? Like, you know, I have credit cards with a bank, I have mortgages with a bank, I have, could be, long-term financing with a bank, or well, who knows? You might have like 6 products with a bank, right? And, and being able to, not, decipher which one of these 800 phone numbers am I going to call, right? And then once I get into there, enter in 16, you'll go down 4 different branches of trees and stuff like that. Just imagine, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to get a, quote on my mortgage, and wow, you've already skipped, most of the spot, most of the push buttons and options and such already. But
Yeah.
I do think it's like when you're ready to simplify, once you're receiving value, you might be churning out, I don't want to say you're churning out excess cash, because no customer service group is kind of extra, doing that. But doing it enough where you can bring in, or start talking about sort of the wholesale change and moving it. It's not. We talk. I talk a lot about. I call it artificial intimidations, different kind of AI. You don't need to know. Especially it was so new to me. Even a couple of years ago, I needed. I knew kind of what I wanted in my head, and I knew what I wanted the end to look like. I didn't necessarily need to know how everything was done sort of behind the scenes. And the best part was, I mean, you rarely talk about it, is having a great partner. And one of the best things in terms of working with AI was really that that entire partnership along the way of kind of walking us through, helping us understand, helping us how to tune, helping us what to look for. The entire analyst team is incredibly awesome. And being able to take that information, kind of be able to understand sort of what the next steps are and such. It's a highly underrated reason for selecting a partner, but that that relationship piece was incredible. I've gotten to meet almost the entire team up and down the entire observe area, just because of our work with them, and everybody's been fantastic too.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned a point where, like, I think it was a banking reference where maybe they have 6 different products, and then customers are getting lost with the 800 numbers, and I don't know what to go for. But even before that, like if we take a step back, right? I think there's, be it IVR or be it AI agents. Now that we're moving towards AI agents, sunsetting IVRs, in both situations, you talked about low risk high value use cases, but even to get to low risk high value, I think you have so many different types of call intents, or why customers are contacting you about.
Yeah.
So from those, I don't know, maybe tens or hundreds of intents, how do you, like, which teams have the data literacy to identify what to actually automate? And beyond that, even for the executives, how do they keep themselves informed about, hey, like these would be the intents we want to go after outside of the high level, this is a low risk, high value use case, but more looking at the transcript, looking at the entire member journey, like what kind of metrics are you looking for, which gives you that signal of, hey, I want to automate these 3 intents first, be it IVR, be it AI agent.
Yeah. So I think any decent contact center leader will tell they'll probably, on the Pareto side of things, they'll tell you the 20% that are driving 80% of your stuff, right? And it might be very let's call it like single layered. I'll give a great example that you guys helped me out with, right? So we know we had a disposition or reason for contact called help with login, right? We also had a disposition for navigating the website. When we looked at like our data that was compiled with Observe AI, and we looked at those dispositions, singularly they're okay, they make up this X% of our call volume, and this makes up Y% of our call volume, what have you. But what was really cool to find out was how often they're layered on top of each other. We're only coding it as a single disposition. Oh, this person called about logging in. Oh, this person called about navigating. But we were able to go much deeper and like, okay, people actually called in, about logging in, who also needed to help navigate. Those calls were like 3.5 times longer than all of our other typical calls, right? Which meant that you know, it means a lot of things, right? It means like we're not, we could be doing a lot more education way, way up front of the entire value stream of about logging in and navigating and right to get rid of these well before the customer, right? This is not even the call center stuff, right? It could be the product or the marketing or what have you. Um, but then understand like, so why is that the case, right? And then start asking those kind of questions of asking, getting down to it. you know, I do think you should be able to say pretty quickly these are this is a low risk, high impact type of contact center. If you gave me an industry, I could probably just spit you out what everybody's generally what everybody's simple one would be, right? Um, and everyone should know it, but it's when you start getting into those next couple layers down. And understanding what you could be looking at, which is again really why it's awesome. Dump all your calls in, understanding what your the metric, the looking at it was amazing when you looked at 100,000 calls, right, to understand different. It's slightly different than why they're calling, or calls that had the longest hold times or had the longest dead airs and all these other kind of factors, right? And look at it in a really, really simple dashboard way is incredibly powerful. Um, and then if you're able to kind of move all that, understanding those things and then being able to apply them to your, your automation or your eventual conversational IVR is really, really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And just to recap for the audience too here. So in terms of the metrics that one really needs to be looking at, and of course this is not exhaustive, um, before you decide what really to automate, you're going to be looking at the handle time for the conversation. You're obviously going to be looking at, dead air and hold violations, how frequently those are happening. If there's an opportunity to reduce that, then, it's great for AI agents to come in here. Then we can also look at the turns, right? And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the handle time, like how many times is the agent speaking, how many times is the customer speaking, like what is that agent to customer talk ratio, right? So, and of course like the volume and risk impact. So these are, I think, great starting points to just assess what intents you think you should start automating. And of course it's going to be trial and experimentation post that. But
Yeah, we didn't even get into sentiment, right? So
yeah,
I mean,
we
that's
didn't
a
even
huge
get
one.
into sentiment. So
So
yeah,
that's a huge one.
yeah.
I love that. And I think, where I want to go into before we go into kind of like the organizational shifts, because I think that's also quite interesting and, what you do with AI next. It's kind of this like readiness recipe. There was a study I was reading a while back by MIT, and it said that over 90% of AI pilots fail. And when I was reading it, it said success is really about two things: deep integration. And the second part, which you kind of hit on earlier, is external partnerships succeed at actually double the rate of an internal build.
Yeah.
And that's wild, right? So I'm looking at it in two ways. One as a consumer, but the other as like a business, because a consumer with AI, I'm like, it's so easy to use. Like, why would an internal build not work? But being on the other side where I'm working with customers all the time, and you just said it too, of this artificial fear of the beginning and the end. Like what you want to happen, but it's the in between sausage making that how are you ever going to define all of that? So I just kind of want to talk about that for a second because there are a lot of articles right now and stats coming out, and I don't think it's like a build versus buy conversation. We don't need to get into that, right? Like
Yeah.
there's reasons for both. but just talk about why a partnership was so critical for you and maybe what was the most important? Was it, figuring out how to begin? Was it figuring out what to move next with? Like, where was it really just this turning point of, wow, I really can't do this without somebody?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You know, it's I think you can. I mean, you could do this, on your own if you'd like, and such. There is some, easy to use tools and stuff like that here. But understanding, having a partner is really important. Probably the biggest reason why, and it's every contact center leadership is thinking about 40 other things besides their AI improvement, right? So at a core minimum, they're looking at the quality of their entire experience. They're looking at their cost scale flexibility. Obviously, they have people and all the people things that come up, and then lastly, their operational excellence, business continuity, risk type of things, right? And making sure all that stuff happens. Um, in that last bucket of operational excellence, you probably have lots of process improvement and other projects going on, and projects that are not your project, right? Marketing as a project, or you have a whole entire company rebrand, or whatever it is, right? You have a lot of things going on. And then the other thing too is, like what we do is deliver great service, at scale. That's our job, right? That's what we do great at. Why not bring somebody in who does that with a specific piece of technology? And it's regardless of what technology. I'm a big fan of finding the right partner that'll help kind of take that load on for you. They understand the pitfalls, where the pitfalls are before you have to go experience them, right? They understand what the tuning needs to be, in this area is what tuning needs to happen, or should you expect an accuracy of 94% or 87%, right? It depends on the thing, and you're only going to get that by having a really great partner, and then a partner that is going to push back and be letting you can do this, you can't do this, you should do this, you shouldn't do this, and kind of help you kind of put all those pieces and parts together. Theoretically, you guys have done this dozens or hundreds of times, right? I've only I'm doing this once or twice ever. So leveraging sort of all that experience is really where the key value is. And particularly once you start getting into things and you do start receiving data, and there's a lot of information there, right? And
Yeah.
then what does that mean for what are the types of changes that you can expect down the line after that? How does your organization need to change? How does your um, workforce management change? All those kind of things. Having a partner who's experienced these things can help you kind of understand how this is going to interact and intersect with lots of whether it's the other parts of your department or even your larger company.
Yeah. I
And
appreciate it.
you need someone to go. You need it's really really important to have I would say of the vendors that I have ever selected, a lot of their tools have been, really, really comparable, but it's the relationship is the part that kind of lasts and, stays with you. We were in constant, contact with, our Observe AI CSM team, throughout the process, after the process, onto the next process, through our entire tenure.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I know I threw a curveball with that
Sorry.
question, but I think it's a big one. And so
It
when I
is.
think about how we've transitioned and how we're helping the group here in terms of like what's the step by step, it's low risk, high impact, understanding.
Before have an objective. Why are you doing this, right?
Yes.
Start with an
Not
objective.
just because
What
there's
is your objective?
AI.
Why do you what there's a lot of people saying like we just got to get into AI. That is not like Okay, you could do that, but have a specific objective. What is this impacting? What are you trying to do with it? Are you looking to lower your contact to order ratio, your contact to member ratio? Are you looking to change something within your CSAT, alleviate headaches for your customer? I mean, there's a whole bunch. I mean, a lot of them can pile on top of each other, but what are the core kind of things that you want to do? And then, yes, figure out, what's the, I think we also got to want to set up that pre-pipeline, which I think is really, really important. That kind of, starts the learning, picking out which is where you can find also a lot of that, low risk, high impact, if you want to switch those words around, but the low risk, high impact areas, and start understanding what your design and sequencing should look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did have one more question, and maybe you answered this. So now that we have AI agents coming in, and obviously, like everyone keeps talking about how it's going to make the lives of human agents simpler, um, maybe in this case, it may not necessarily be true, right? So if your AI agents are handling most of the, simpler call types, now your human agents are tasked with the more complex ones, correct? Yes, it makes their life easier in terms of the volume of calls that they need to handle so they can be more productive on these, tougher conversations. But if they're now only focused on handling these complex cases, obviously they're complex by nature. So, because they're now only focusing on it, their performance, their grading rubric has to change. It's probably going to get more stringent. Um, and as I mentioned before, we already know how, human agents feel about being graded unfairly. So, what is your advice to leaders trying to make this change on how to drive change management or levels, have a completely different set of expectations on performance with their, contact center agents now that they're bringing in AI agents?
So let's start with, this isn't the first time this kind of has come up to, been proposed or been brought up to, customer service leadership, right? About 25 years ago, people were saying nobody's ever going to call in anymore because we're going to build these things called websites. And that will just make it so nobody has to call in. And then there was, people are just going to use social media to, for customer service, right? Or, maybe, and actually probably before that was IVRs, right? People are still going to interact. But I do think even up to this point, it has made the conversations a lot more difficult. They are not, simple type of things. And they are becoming more complex. So a couple things that theoretically should happen, right? One, you're taking away the easy stuff. There should be excess bandwidth for the more difficult things, right? And theoretically, some of the more difficult things are also probably the things that, if they're not done well, can lead to churn, or whether it be customer or an entire business churning away from you because of a customer experience and what have you. I think the other thing too is that while the contacts also may be more difficult, your tools are also getting a lot better, right? So one of the things we really didn't touch on here a bunch, but we put in was agent assist, right? So between all the stuff that, if you want to layer in if you have an FAQ database or knowledge base and layering that into things, or, leverage all the learning that, was pumped into that, sort of pre-cycle and such, being able to provide the agents with, access to either find information or tagged information is really, really, helpful. If I'll go into healthcare space with this one, right? If you have healthcare benefits, they could be incredibly complex. Individual by individual employer versus another employer versus, what options people pick in, right? So there could be all kinds of different mazes for, people to for an agent to have to go through like a system, you can't train them on everything, right? There's too
Sure.
much to train on nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So be able to kind of pull in those resources is really, really important. Makes their job easier, allows them to, handle these more complex tasks, a little bit easier. And again, I mean, and theoretically too, it should be a bit more rewarding to be able to help somebody out. It's a lot different than I helped you log in versus, helped you clear, find the right benefit and doctor for you, to, take your kid to the right, place to get, help. It's a lot different in terms of, how an agent can feel and, the
Yeah,
bigger
that
around.
is true. Yeah, I never thought about the rewarding part at all, because I think I just got, with all of this AI everywhere, I've my mindset has become almost robotic in the sense that, oh, it's just a, checklist of my from my task list. So yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense if you're able to, convey to your agents that, hey, this is, you're doing thing that's actually going to matter to these individuals' lives. And yeah, that
Yeah.
definitely will
Having
drive
a,
the
having a
conversation.
purpose is really, really important for, contact center engagement, morale, retention, satisfaction, also too, I mean, we didn't even get into all the QA stuff, but there's so many things there that can help people. Yeah, I think genuinely most people want to do their jobs well and improve upon doing it well. And there's so many tools and areas, when you start getting into the, the QA side of things that, you know, the big difference between doing 1% and 2% manual QA and doing 100% QA is, pretty dramatic. And the
Yeah.
insights there are gigantic. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like we could like do a whole next series on where we're transitioning to this conversation. I love it, and I wish we had a whole extra hour. But I do think that you guys both hit on a very interesting point that, it is an industry that has really high attrition. So I mean, nobody knows at this point, it's too early, but it'll be interesting to just kind of track attrition or retention on the flip side and see, like, are they more motivated because they do feel like they're making a larger impact with AI? I don't know, but that's definitely interesting. The one thing that you guys both mentioned, though, that I think is a great way to end our conversation today, for everybody else on the call, is it's not just about thinking about AI in terms of AI agents in this transformation. The human agents, while you are offloading, you are fundamentally changing the way they are interacting with their customers. And with that, there has to be tools and there has to be resources.
Yes.
Um, and with how quickly everything is changing, you think just about the innovation within your own companies, that's hard to keep up with. And so AI as a co-pilot, if you will, to help the agents feel comfortable, have access to information exactly when they need it, is likely the not final piece, but I'll say the final piece for this conversation in terms of how to think about that transformation, in terms of those building blocks of, are you ready? Because AI agents aren't just the only front line. So those humans need to feel supported as well.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even get, we didn't get into,
Yeah.
how we can think about this, reducing training time,
Mhm.
cycle time, improving the resources of agents. You know, agents, think of like Maslow's hierarchy, right? You take care of, all the sort of table stakes of compensation and job security and such. If you have a strong engagement environment, your engagement surveys are going to come back with, usually if they're complaining about the tools they're using, you're usually in a pretty good place, right? You got a pretty good center going. But that's like the cream. That's like where they're, you know, if all the other base things are good, they're gonna want better tools to help folks out. And we showed that this was really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll just have to have you on for a round two to kind of talk about what's after AI agents. We'll keep the journey and the conversation going with you,
Yeah,
Mike.
we didn't even get into call summarization,
No.
how we pay for
Yeah, none of
everything.
that.
So
We're just
yeah,
at the tip of the iceberg here,
yeah, it is. There's a lot. Yeah,
folks.
but it's not
Love
that.
it.
It's actually not that complicated once you get into it. Like you don't need to know how the sausage is made. You just need to know what do you want to do, where do you want to get to, and just an idea of the vision of what the end looks like. There's a lot of things you can do in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. And build your center of excellence, both internally and
Yes,
externally to help you get there.
yes.
Yeah, love that. All right. Well,
Exciting times to live in.
yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, I mean,
Very exciting.
I've been living almost every alternate day for some or the other issue. Like, I don't know, I have to contact customer support. Right? Things are not very seamless in the products that I tend to purchase. And so I think it was pretty recently when I was trying to set up my gas and electricity that I think that was my first experience with a fully automated with an AI agent, and it was so much easier. Yeah, I felt like, oh wow, like this is so much easier than me trying to set up my internet or me trying to reach out to someone about, hey, my router is not working. So, um, yeah, great time to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So many opportunities. Oh my goodness. All the additional use cases. We didn't even get into that, Mike.
No, I mean, there's a lot. I mean,
There's a lot.
there's a lot. And again, don't be artificially intimidated. It's yeah, yeah. I think if you actually sat down, I've done this with the Northeast Contact Center Forum. It's a nonprofit, community of customer service leaders across the United States, and you know, there's still just there's a trepidation there. It's not like they're not afraid Terminator is going to come out of this thing and Skynet's going to take over. It's not that, right? And I don't think they're afraid like, oh, it's going to take over all my agents. It's this is complicated. I don't understand this. Um, you know, Find someone who does understand this, and then start putting those pieces. Start kind of walking through what those pieces are, and it's get your data downloaded. Find where you want to attack, hit those low risk, high impact areas, reap the benefits of it, look at the benefit, pick like your next spots, and then what are you going to go into next? Whether it's again, you can keep looking, to wholesale change your IVR or get more into the QA side, the agent assist side, the summarization side of things. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go. And it gets a lot more complicated once you just, it is kind of like dipping into the pool, just going a little bit at a time, and it's kind of easy. And next thing you know, you're just, the analogy is really, really good there.
Yeah. Well, we hope today was helpful for everybody. Mike, it was such a pleasure speaking with you. I think that this is such a fascinating topic. It's not a simple blueprint, but to have some key things as milestones and just anchors for everybody here to ground on, I think has been extremely, extremely insightful. So thank you so much. And for everybody on the phone, keep your eye out for our next Impact series. We'll be kind of expanding from IVR and the voice world to speaking with Valerie Stover from Affordable Care on omni-channel, a whole different complexity to all of this. So we're just gonna keep the mess going and help you guys one step at a time.
All it is. Yep.
So with that, thank you again, Mike.
Thank
As
you.
always, Sneha, love co-hosting with you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening.
Thank you for your time, Mike.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Valuable conversation. Hope everybody, took a lot from this. All right. See you next month.
Bye.